The blood on her hands was not her own, but the wanted poster nailed to the post office wall said otherwise, and Willow Quinn watched from the shadows as a woman with dark hair and desperate eyes tore it down, before disappearing into the New Mexico twilight. It was late summer in 1883, and hot springs shimmered under a merciless sun that turned the desert into liquid gold. Willow had been mending fence posts on the outskirts of his ranch when he first spotted her stumbling through the scrub brush, her dress torn and dusty, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Most men would have ridden straight to the sheriff, collected whatever reward money was promised, and gone about their business. Willow was not most men. He dismounted slowly, holding his hands where she could see them. "Easy now," he said, his voice low and calm like he was gentling a spooked horse. "I am not going to hurt you." The woman spun toward him, her hand flying to her side where no weapon waited. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, wide with fear and something else. Defiance, maybe. Or exhaustion so deep it had carved shadows beneath her eyes. "Stay back," she warned, though her voice cracked on the words. "You look like you have been running for a while," Willow said, taking in her split lip and the angry bruise blooming across her cheekbone. "There is water on my horse. Food, too, if you want it." "Why?" The single word came out sharp as broken glass. "You know what I am. I saw you in town. You were standing right there when that man put up the posters." Willow had indeed been there. He had seen the sheriff tack up the crude drawing, had heard him announce that Mara Jenkins was wanted for the murder of a wealthy rancher named Theodore Sutton. $500 for her capture, dead or alive. Half the men in Hot Springs had saddled up within the hour, hungry for that kind of money. "I saw the poster," Willow acknowledged. "I also saw how your hands were shaking when you tore it down. Guilty people do not usually come back to the scene. You do not know anything about me." But some of the fight had drained from her voice. "No," he agreed. "But I know Theodore Sutton, knew him, I suppose. He was a mean drunk who liked to throw his weight around, had a reputation for being rough with women." He paused, watching her carefully. "So here is what I think. I think you were protecting yourself, and I think you need help." Mara's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "He would not stop. I told him no, I pushed him away, but he just kept coming. His hands were around my throat and I could not breathe, and there was a letter opener on his desk. I did not mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop." The words tumbled out in a rush like a dam breaking. Willow listened without interrupting, his jaw tight. When she finished, he simply nodded and said, "My ranch is about 3 miles north. You can stay there until we figure this out." "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Willow met her eyes steadily. "Because it is the right thing to do, and because I have seen too many men get away with hurting women while the women get blamed for fighting back." That was how Mara Jenkins came to hide in the small ranch house that Willow Quinn had built with his own hands 5 years earlier. It sat in a hollow between 2 red rock hills, invisible from the main road. His nearest neighbor was 10 miles away. If a man wanted to disappear, this was the place to do it. Willow figured it would work just as well for a woman. Those first few days were tense. Mara jumped at every sound, spent hours staring out the window like she expected a posse to come thundering over the horizon at any moment. Willow gave her space, went about his usual work of tending to his small herd of cattle and horses, fixing what needed fixing, and trying to act like it was perfectly normal to have a fugitive sleeping in his spare room. He was 26 years old, had been working this land since he was barely old enough to hold a rope. His parents had died of fever when he was 19, leaving him alone with 200 acres of stubborn desert and a determination to make something of himself. He had always been a solitary man, more comfortable with animals than people. The silence of the ranch suited him, but having Mara there changed things. The house felt different with another presence in it, with the scent of her soap lingering in the air and the sound of her footsteps on the wooden floor. She was 23, she told him on the third night, when they sat across from each other at his small kitchen table eating beans and cornbread. She had been working as a seamstress in Santa Fe, saving money to buy her own shop one day. Sutton had come in to have a suit altered, had seemed charming at first. By the time she realized what kind of man he really was, it was too late. "He invited me to his ranch to measure for curtains," she said, staring down at her plate. "Said he would pay triple my usual rate. I should have known better. But I needed the money, and I thought in broad daylight with his ranch hands around, what could happen?" Her laugh was bitter. "Turns out he had sent them all into town on errands. It was just him and me, and when I tried to leave, he locked the door." Willow felt anger coil hot in his chest. "You did what you had to do to survive. That is not murder, that is self-defense. The law does not see it that way." Sutton had money, had friends in high places. His brother is a territorial judge. They want someone to hang for this, and I am convenient. She looked up at him then, her gray eyes fierce. "I will not let them hang me for saving my own life." "They will not get the chance," Willow said, and he meant it. Over the following weeks, a strange routine developed. Willow would rise before dawn, do his chores, then come back to find Mara had made breakfast. She insisted on contributing somehow, could not stand feeling useless. So she cooked and cleaned, mended his shirts and patched his worn pants. She had gentle hands and a quick smile that came more easily as the days passed, and no one came looking for her. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their pasts. Willow told her about growing up on the ranch, about his father teaching him to track animals and read the weather in the clouds. About his mother, who had loved books and music, and had tried to bring a little beauty to their harsh life. Mara told him about her own mother, a widow who had taken in sewing to keep food on the table after Mara's father died in the war. About learning to sew before she could barely hold a needle, about the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with her own hands. "I miss it," she admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple. "I know that probably sounds foolish, missing something like sewing when I am running for my life. But it was mine, you know, the one thing I was truly good at." "It does not sound foolish," Willow said. "Everyone needs something that is theirs. For me, it is working with the horses. There is a gray mare in the barn that was half wild when I got her. Took me 3 months to get a saddle on her back. But now she follows me around like a puppy. That feeling when an animal trusts you, when you know you have done right by them, there is nothing quite like it." Mara turned to look at him, really look at him, and Willow felt something shift in the air between them. He had thought her pretty from the start, even with the bruises and the fear stamped on her features. But now, with the golden light of sunset painting her face and her eyes soft on his, she was beautiful. "You are a good man, Willow Quinn," she said quietly. "I do not think I have ever known anyone quite like you." Willow felt his throat go tight. "I am just doing what anyone should do." But they would not. Most people would have turned me in without a second thought. "You hid me. You protected me. You asked for nothing in return." She hesitated, then reached out and laid her hand over his where it rested on the porch railing. "Why?" He looked down at her hand, small and warm against his calloused palm. "At first I thought it was just because it was the right thing to do, but I think maybe it was more than that. The moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you, like we were both looking for the same thing and did not even know it." "What thing?" Mara's voice was barely a whisper. "A place to belong. Someone who understands." He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. I have been alone for a long time, Mara. I did not realize how alone until you showed up, and suddenly this house felt like a home again." They sat there as the stars began to prick through the darkening sky, hands clasped, neither wanting to break the moment. It was Mara who finally spoke. "I am falling in love with you," she said, and there was wonder in her voice. "I did not think I could feel this way, not after everything, but you make me feel safe. You make me feel seen." Willow brought her hand to his lips, pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I am already in love with you. Have been since you tried to threaten me when you did not even have a weapon. You are the bravest person I have ever met." Mara laughed, a real laugh this time, bright and free. Then she leaned in and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as he cupped her face in his hands. She tasted like the coffee they had shared after dinner, and something sweeter, something that was just her. Willow felt like he was drowning and being saved all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Mara rested her forehead against his. "What are we going to do?" "We cannot hide here forever. Eventually someone will find me. Then we make sure they do not have a reason to keep looking," Willow said. "There has to be a way to clear your name, someone who saw something, some kind of evidence. Sutton's lawyer already has everyone convinced I went there planning to rob him, that I killed him in cold blood when he caught me. My word against a dead man's reputation." The despair in her voice cut at Willow's heart. "Then we find a new witness. We find the truth." It was easier said than done. Willow started making careful inquiries the next time he went into Hot Springs for supplies, listening to gossip at the general store and the saloon. What he heard was not encouraging. The hunt for Mara had died down some, but Sutton's brother, Judge Frederick Sutton, was keeping the pressure on. He had hired a private detective, a man named Roland Pierce, who had a reputation for always getting his quarry. Willow came home tense and worried, and Mara saw it immediately. "What happened?" he told her, watched her face go pale. "A detective. That means he will not give up. He will keep looking until he finds me. Not if we find evidence first." Willow paced the small living room, thinking hard. There has to be someone who knew what Sutton was really like. Some other woman he hurt, some ranch hand he crossed. Something. "His housekeeper," Mara said suddenly. "There was a woman who worked for him, older woman with gray hair. She gave me the strangest look when Sutton showed me into his study, like she was trying to warn me about something." "Do you remember her name?" Sutton called her Mrs. Chen. She did not speak much English, or at least she pretended not to. It took Willow 3 days of careful searching to track down Mrs. Chen. She had left Sutton's employment shortly after his death and was now living with her son in a small house on the outskirts of Santa Fe. Willow rode out alone, not wanting to risk Mara being spotted. He found the older woman tending a vegetable garden behind the house, her hands deep in the rich earth. "Mrs. Chen?" he asked, removing his hat respectfully. She looked up, her dark eyes assessing him. "I know who you are. You are the man who has been asking questions about Theodore Sutton." Willow felt a chill. "How did you know?" Word travels. "What do you want?" The truth. About what kind of man Sutton really was. Mrs. Chen stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. "The truth is he was a monster. The truth is I saw him hurt 3 different women over the years I worked for him. The truth is when I found Miss Jenkins standing over his body, I did not call the sheriff right away. I cleaned her face, I gave her water, I told her to run. Her face was carved from stone, showing no emotion. The truth is I told the sheriff I found the body after she was gone, that I saw nothing, because I knew what he had tried to do to her. I saw the marks on her throat." Hope surged through Willow. "Would you testify to that? Would you tell the law what you saw and risk being deported?" "Risk my son losing his mother. Judge Sutton has made it very clear what happens to anyone who speaks against his brother's memory." She shook her head. "I am sorry. I wish I could help, but I have a family to protect." Willow understood, even as disappointment settled heavy in his chest. He started to turn away, then stopped. "What about the other women? The one Sutton hurt before, one moved back east, one married a rancher in Colorado, the third." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "Her name is Sarah Porter. She runs a boarding house here in Santa Fe. She might talk to you if you approach her carefully." Sarah Porter was a thin woman in her 30s with sad eyes and capable hands. She listened to Willow's carefully worded questions, then invited him into her small private parlor away from her boarders. "I heard about what happened to Theodore Sutton," she said, pouring them both coffee from a delicate china pot. "I will not pretend I mourned him. Can you tell me about your experience with him?" Sarah's hands tightened on her cup. 3 years ago, I worked as a cook at his ranch. He forced himself on me one night after the other servants had gone to bed. When I told the sheriff, he said I had no proof. Sutton claimed I had tried to seduce him and was angry he rejected me. Everyone believed him because he was rich and important, and I was just hired help." She looked Willow straight in the eye. "If a woman killed him defending herself, I hope she gets away clean. I hope she lives a long, happy life knowing she rid the world of a predator. Would you testify to what he did to you? Help prove what kind of man he was?" "I already tried to speak up once. It nearly destroyed my life. Sutton made sure I could not get work anywhere in the territory. I had to start over, build this business from nothing." Sarah shook her head. "I admire what you are trying to do, whoever you are trying to help. But I cannot risk everything again. I am sorry." Willow rode back to the ranch feeling defeated. He had found witnesses, but they were too afraid to speak. Judge Sutton had everyone terrorized into silence. Mara took one look at his face when he walked through the door and knew. No one will help. They are too scared, and I cannot blame them. Sutton's brother has too much power. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "We will figure something else out. Maybe we can leave the territory entirely. Head to California or Oregon, start over where no one knows your face. Run forever." Mara pulled back to look at him. "Always looking over my shoulder, always afraid. That is no life, Willow, and it is not fair to you. You have your ranch, your home. I will not ask you to give that up. You are not asking, I am offering. This place does not mean anything without you in it." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "I love you, Mara Jenkins. I want to spend my life with you. If that means leaving everything behind and starting over, then that is what we will do." Tears spilled down Mara's cheeks. "I love you too, so much it scares me. I never thought I would feel this way about anyone." They held each other as the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, making plans for a future that felt impossibly fragile. They would sell the ranch quietly, get as much money as they could without drawing attention. They would head west, maybe to a small town in California where they could claim to be a married couple starting fresh. Willow could find work on a ranch, Mara could sew. It would not be easy, but they would have each other. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The detective, Roland Pierce, had been methodically working his way through every ranch and homestead within 100 miles of Hot Springs. He was good at his job, patient and thorough. When he heard about a rancher named Willow Quinn, who lived alone in the hills and had been asking questions about Theodore Sutton, his instincts told him to take a closer look. Pierce came on a Tuesday morning when Willow was out checking on his cattle. Mara was inside kneading bread dough when she heard the horse. She looked out the window and felt her blood turn to ice. The man dismounting wore a badge pinned to his vest and had the cold, assessing eyes of a hunter who had found his prey. She had perhaps 2 minutes before he reached the door. Not enough time to run, nowhere to hide. Mara made a split-second decision. She grabbed the rifle from above the fireplace, checked that it was loaded, and positioned herself behind the door. When Pierce knocked, she did not answer. When he tried the handle and found it unlocked, he pushed the door open slowly. "Miss Jenkins, I know you are in here. I am Detective Roland Pierce. I am going to have to ask you to come with me." Mara stepped out behind him, the rifle leveled at his back. "Put your gun on the floor, slowly." Pierce froze, then carefully removed his pistol and set it down. "Easy now. No need for anyone to get hurt." "That is what I told Theodore Sutton. He did not listen either." Mara's hands were steady on the rifle despite her racing heart. "Get on your knees, hands on your head." Pierce complied, but there was no fear in his eyes, only calculation. "You are only making this worse for yourself and for Quinn. He is an accessory now. You want him to hang beside you. Shut up." But the words hit home. This was exactly what Mara had feared, that her presence would destroy Willow's life. "I have a dozen deputies within shouting distance," Pierce lied smoothly. "This ranch is surrounded, but if you come peacefully, I will make sure Quinn is not charged. You have my word." "Your word means nothing." But Mara's resolve was wavering. If she shot this man, she would be a murderer for real. If she let him take her, Willow would try to stop him and could get killed. There was no good choice. That was when Willow came through the back door, having spotted the unfamiliar horse from his position on the range. He took in the scene in an instant. Mara holding the detective at gunpoint, the desperation in her eyes, the smugness on Pierce's face. "Mara, put the gun down," Willow said quietly. "I cannot. If I do, he will take me. They will hang me." "No one is hanging you, but shooting a lawman will guarantee they try." Willow moved slowly into the room, positioning himself between Mara and Pierce. "We are going to do this differently." "There is no different way," Pierce said. "She is wanted for murder. I am taking her in." "Not until you hear the whole story." Willow's voice was hard as flint. "Theodore Sutton attacked her. She defended herself. That is not murder. Got any proof of that? I have witnesses. Women he attacked before. His housekeeper who saw the marks on Mara's throat. It was a gamble, hoping that the threat of witnesses might be enough even if they would not actually testify, but Pierce was already shaking his head. "I have already talked to them. They will not speak. Judge Sutton made sure of that. And even if they would, it would not matter. The judge wants someone to pay for his brother's death, and he has the law on his side." "Then the law is wrong," Mara said fiercely. "I will not go quietly to a hanging because it is convenient for powerful men." The three of them stood there in tense standoff, nobody quite sure what to do next. That was when they heard more horses approaching. Mara felt her heart sink. If Pierce really had brought backup, this was over. But the man who walked through the door was not a deputy. He was older, maybe 50, with silver-shot hair and the bearing of someone used to authority. He wore fine clothes and a concerned expression. "I heard there was trouble out here," he said, looking at each of them in turn. His gaze lingered on Mara, and recognition flashed in his eyes. "Miss Jenkins, I presume?" "My name is Judge Robert Morrison. I believe we need to talk." Pierce looked confused. "Judge Morrison, what are you doing here?" "I came because I received a very interesting letter from Mrs. Alina Chen." She detailed several incidents of assault committed by Theodore Sutton, including an attack on Miss Jenkins. She also informed me that she would be willing to testify to this if given protection from Judge Frederick Sutton's retaliation. Hope flared in Willow's chest. Mrs. Chen agreed to testify. She did, after I promised her family safety and made it clear that Judge Sutton's intimidation tactics would not be tolerated in my territory. Morrison's face was stern. "I have been investigating Frederick Sutton for some time now. The man has been using his position to silence anyone who speaks against his family. This situation gave me the leverage I needed to take action." "This is irregular," Pierce protested. "I have a warrant for Miss Jenkins' arrest, and I have the authority to suspend that warrant pending a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding Theodore Sutton's death." Morrison pulled papers from his coat. "Miss Jenkins, you will need to come with me to Santa Fe to give your testimony. But I promise you a fair hearing, something you would not have gotten from Judge Sutton." Mara lowered the rifle slowly, afraid to believe this was real. "You will hear my side of things. I will hear everything, including testimony from Mrs. Chen and any other witnesses we can find. If the evidence supports self-defense, as I believe it will, the charges against you will be dropped." Morrison's expression softened. "My daughter was attacked by a man of wealth and standing some years ago. No one believed her. I will not let that injustice be repeated if I can prevent it." Willow moved to Mara's side, taking her hand. "I am coming with her." "I would expect nothing less," Morrison said with a slight smile. "Shall we?" The trip to Santa Fe was tense but hopeful. Morrison put Mara up in a hotel under guard but made it clear she was a witness, not a prisoner. Willow stayed in the room next door, spending every possible moment with her, holding her hand through the long evenings as they waited for the hearing. Mrs. Chen came forward as promised, and with Morrison's protection. So did Sarah Porter and eventually even the woman who had moved to Colorado. The stories they told painted a damning picture of Theodore Sutton as a serial predator who had used his wealth and status to escape consequences. The hearing took 3 days. Mara testified about the attack, about fighting for her life, about the horror of realizing she had killed someone even in self-defense. The prosecutor, forced to actually do his job under Morrison's watchful eye, tried to poke holes in her story but could not shake her testimony. In the end, Judge Morrison ruled that Mara had acted in self-defense and all charges were dropped. Frederick Sutton, enraged, tried to use his influence to overturn the decision, but Morrison had built an ironclad case. Moreover, Morrison used the investigation to expose several other instances of judicial corruption by Frederick Sutton. Within 6 months, Frederick would be removed from the bench in disgrace. But Mara and Willow did not stay in Santa Fe to see that unfold. They returned to the ranch in Hot Springs, this time with Mara riding beside Willow as his fiancée, her name cleared and her future finally her own. They were married on a crisp autumn morning 2 months later. The ceremony was small, just a handful of friends and neighbors, but it was perfect. Mara wore a dress she had sewn herself, ivory silk with delicate embroidery on the bodice. Willow wore his best suit and could not stop staring at her like she was something precious and miraculous. "I love you," he whispered as they stood before the minister. "I will love you every day for the rest of my life." "I love you too," Mara whispered back, tears shining in her gray eyes. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved." "No," Willow said, lifting her hand to his lips. "We saved each other. The years that followed were rich and full." Mara set up a sewing business in their spare room, her reputation for fine work spreading quickly. Women came from miles around to have her make their wedding dresses and Sunday best. Willow expanded the ranch, his cattle and horses thriving under his careful management. But the greatest joy came 2 years after their wedding when Mara gave birth to their first child. They named him Thomas, after Willow's father. He was a squalling, red-faced miracle, and Willow wept when he first held his son. "I never knew I could love anything this much," he said, cradling the tiny baby with infinite care. "Except you." Mara, exhausted but radiant, smiled from the bed. "We made him together, our own little family." Thomas was followed 2 years later by a daughter they named Catherine, for Mara's mother. She had Mara's gray eyes and Willow's stubborn determination. Then came another son, Samuel, who was quiet and thoughtful from birth. The house that had once been so silent rang with children's laughter, with the sounds of a family building a life together. On cool evenings, after the children were asleep, Mara and Willow would sit on the porch like they had in those early days when she was still in hiding. They would hold hands and watch the stars emerge in the vast New Mexico sky, marveling at how far they had come. "You ever think about how we met?" Mara asked one such evening, her head resting on Willow's shoulder. "About how close I came to hanging. I try not to," Willow admitted. "It still makes me angry, thinking about how you were hunted for defending yourself. But if it had not happened, we might never have found each other." Mara lifted her head to look at him. "Is that terrible to say?" "That I am grateful for the thing that brought us together, even though it was so awful." Willow considered this. "I think we find grace where we can. What happened to you was wrong and Sutton deserved what he got, but you are right that it brought you to me. So I am grateful too, even though I wish you had never had to suffer." "I would go through it all again if I knew you were waiting at the end," Mara said softly. "You are the best man I have ever known, Willow Quinn. And you are the strongest woman I have ever known, Mara Quinn." They kissed as the desert wind whispered through the scrub brush, and the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. Two people who had found each other in the midst of chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The children grew. Thomas became his father's shadow, learning to work with the horses and cattle, tall and steady like the man who raised him. Catherine showed her mother's gift with needle and thread, creating intricate embroidery by the time she was 10. Samuel loved books and learning, reminding Willow of his own mother's thirst for knowledge. Willow and Mara made sure to tell their children their story when they were old enough to understand. Not the sanitized version, but the truth about how their mother had to fight for her life, and how their father had chosen to protect her when it would have been easier to turn away. "Why did you hide, Mother, when you did not even know her?" Catherine asked when she was 12, her gray eyes serious. "Because it was right," Willow said simply. "Sometimes you meet someone and you just know they need help. Your mother needed someone to believe in her. I am glad I was that person." "But you could have gotten in trouble," Thomas pointed out, 16 and practical like his father. "Some things are worth risking trouble for," Mara said, reaching across the table to take Willow's hand. "Your father taught me that. He taught me that there are still good people in the world, people who do right even when it is hard." As the children entered adulthood, they carried those lessons with them. Thomas took over more of the ranch work, eventually marrying a school teacher named Alice and building a house on the far end of the property. Catherine moved to Santa Fe to study art, her talents taking her beyond simple sewing into genuine artistry. Samuel became a lawyer, determined to help people who needed someone to fight for them, inspired by his mother's story. The years passed in the way they do, marked by seasons and celebrations, by hard work and small joys. Willow's hair went gray at the temples, then white. Mara's face gained lines but lost none of its beauty, at least not in Willow's eyes. They grew old together, watching their children have children, their legacy spreading like roots through good soil. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party. The ranch house, expanded over the years, was full of family and friends. There was music and dancing, good food and better company. Willow looked around at all the faces, at the family he and Mara had built, and felt his chest swell with an emotion too big for words. Later, when the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, he and Mara took their customary place on the porch. They were older now, moved a little slower, but the love between them had only deepened with time. 30 years, Mara marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday I was stumbling through the desert, scared and alone, and sometimes it feels like we have always been together. We have always been together, Willow said. We just did not know it yet. We were always meant to find each other. Do you remember what I said that first night on this porch? That I was falling in love with you. I remember everything about that night. Mara smiled. I was wrong, you know. I was not falling in love with you. I had already fallen. I just did not realize it yet. Willow turned to her, this woman who had changed his entire life, who had filled his house with love and laughter, who had given him purpose beyond his own survival. I knew, he said. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were going to matter. I just did not know how much. They sat together as the stars came out, the same stars that had witnessed their first kiss, their wedding vows, every important moment of their shared life. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and promise. Somewhere in the house, one of their grandchildren laughed. Life continued its beautiful, messy flow. Willow pulled Mara close, and she rested her head on his shoulder like she had 1,000 times before. They did not need words anymore. They had said everything that needed saying over 3 decades of building a life together. The wanted poster was long gone, burned years ago in a gesture of defiance and relief. The charges were dismissed, the danger passed. But even if none of that had happened, even if Mara had remained a fugitive forever, Willow knew he would have made the same choice. He would have hidden her, protected her, loved her without question or hesitation, because some truths are bigger than law, more important than convenience or safety. The truth of 2 souls recognizing each other across the chaos of life. The truth of choosing love when hate would be easier. The truth of standing beside someone when the world wants them to fall. As they sat together under the vast New Mexico sky, Willow and Mara Quinn were living proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust your heart. That justice and the law are not always the same thing. That love, real love, is worth fighting for no matter the cost. The ranch would continue after they were gone, passed down through generations of children and grandchildren, each carrying a piece of their story. Thomas would tell his children about the grandmother who fought for her life and the grandfather who gave her shelter. Catherine would paint their story in oils and watercolor, capturing the fierce love in their eyes. Samuel would cite their example in courtrooms, defending those who needed someone to believe in them. But that was still years away. For now, on this perfect evening with the stars bright overhead and the person they loved most in the world by their side, Willow and Mara were simply happy. They had survived everything the world threw at them and come out the other side stronger, their love a shelter against every storm. "What are you thinking about?" Mara asked softly. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am." Willow pressed a kiss to her temple. "How that scared woman stumbling through the desert became the best thing that ever happened to me. I was not the only lucky one. You gave me everything, Willow. Safety, love, a family, a future. You gave me my life back. You gave me mine, too. I did not even realize how alone I was until you filled all the empty spaces." They fell quiet again, comfortable in their silence. Inside the house, a clock chimed the hour. The wind rustled through the cottonwoods Willow had planted when Thomas was born, now tall and strong. The desert stretched out around them, vast and unforgiving and beautiful, just like the life they had built together. As the evening deepened into night, they finally went inside, hand in hand. In their bedroom, the one they had shared for 30 years, they lay down together. Willow pulled Mara close, her head on his chest, their bodies fitting together with the ease of long practice. "I love you," Mara whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Willow whispered back. Always have, always will. They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who had found their home in each other's arms. Outside, the stars continued their eternal watch, bearing witness to a love story that had started with a wanted poster and ended with a legacy that would outlive them both. The wanted poster had shown a murderer, but Willow had seen past that to the frightened, brave woman beneath. He had hidden her without hesitation, protected her without question, and loved her without conditions. And in doing so, he had found the one thing he had not even known he was searching for, a partner. A love. A home. And Mara, who had once thought her life was over, who had run through the desert expecting death at every turn, had found something she had never dared hope for. Someone who saw her truth and believed in her. Someone who stood between her and danger without flinching. Someone who loved her, not despite her past but including it, accepting all of her. Their story became legend in Hot Springs and beyond. The woman who killed in self-defense and the cowboy who hid her. Some told it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of harboring fugitives. Others told it as a romance, about true love conquering all odds. A few told it as an indictment of a justice system that valued wealthy men over vulnerable women. But for those who knew them, who sat at their table and heard their laughter, who saw the way they looked at each other even after decades of marriage, it was simply a love story. The best kind, the kind that was messy and complicated and real. The kind that started in desperation and grew into something beautiful and lasting. Years later, when they were old and gray, and their grandchildren clustered around them demanding stories, Willow and Mara would tell them about the day they met. About a wanted poster and a desperate flight through the desert. About a choice to help someone who needed it, no matter the personal cost. About love that bloomed in the most unlikely circumstances and endured through everything life threw at them. The most important thing, Willow would say, his weathered hand holding Mara's equally weathered one, is to do right even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. That is when it matters most. And the second most important thing, Mara would add with a smile, is to hold on tight when you find something worth keeping. Life is unpredictable and often unfair, but love makes it bearable. Love makes it beautiful. The grandchildren would listen wide-eyed, already beginning to understand that they came from something special. That their grandparents' story was not just history, but a template for how to live, how to love, how to be brave when the world demands cowardice. On Willow's 75th birthday, surrounded by 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren, he stood with Mara by his side and looked around at the family they had created. Every single person in this room existed because he had chosen compassion over caution, love over law, righteousness over ease. "I've had a good life," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered family. "I have been blessed beyond measure, and it all started the day I met your grandmother. She is the reason for all of this, every good thing, every moment of joy. She is my miracle." Mara, tears streaming down her face, held his hand tight. "And you are mine. You saved me, Willow Quinn. You saved me and you loved me and you gave me a life beyond anything I could have dreamed. I am the luckiest woman who ever lived." They kissed then, these 2 old people who had loved each other through 30-plus years of marriage, and their family erupted in applause and cheers. It was a moment of pure joy, of recognition that love, real lasting love, was possible. That it was worth fighting for, that it could survive anything. As the party continued around them, Willow and Mara slipped away to their porch, their sanctuary, the place where so much of their story had unfolded. They sat in their old rocking chairs, watching the sun set over the New Mexico desert they both loved. "You have any regrets?" Mara asked quietly. Willow thought about it seriously before answering. "I regret that you had to suffer. I regret that Theodore Sutton existed and hurt you and all those other women. I regret that the system failed you so completely that you had to run for your life." He paused, squeezing her hand. "But I do not regret a single choice I made from the moment I met you. I would do it all again exactly the same way. Even knowing what it cost you, the danger, the worry, the risk to your ranch and your freedom, even knowing all that, you were worth it, Mara. You were always worth it." They rocked gently as the light faded, the sounds of their family drifting out from the house. This was their legacy, Willow thought. Not just the ranch or the children or the grandchildren, but the proof that choosing love over fear could change everything. That standing up for what was right mattered. That one person's courage could ripple out and touch so many lives. The story of the wanted poster and the cowboy who hid her became part of the family mythology, passed down through generations. Long after Willow and Mara were gone, their descendants would tell it to their children, keeping the memory alive. The specific details might change with each telling, but the heart of it remained constant. A woman in desperate need. A man who chose compassion. A love that changed everything. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Willow and Mara sat together in comfortable silence. They had lived their story, built their legacy, raised their family. They had fought for each other and for the life they wanted, and they had won. The wanted poster was long gone, crumbled to dust decades ago. The people who had hunted Mara were dead or forgotten. The injustice that had nearly cost her life was a distant memory, overcome by years of happiness and love. What remained was this: two people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk together into the light. Two people who had loved each other without question, without hesitation, without condition. Two people who had proven that sometimes the most radical act is simple kindness, and the most powerful force is love. Willow Quinn had seen a wanted poster with Mara Jenkins' face on it, and made a choice. He could have taken the easy path, could have turned her in and collected his reward and gone on with his solitary life. Instead, he had hidden her, protected her, and loved her. And in doing so, he had found his purpose, his partner, his home. Mara Jenkins had been running for her life when she stumbled onto Willow's ranch. She could have kept running, could have refused his help and tried to make it alone. Instead, she had trusted him, opened her heart to him, and built a life with him. And in doing so, she had found her safety, her love, her future. Together, they had created something beautiful from chaos, something lasting from desperation. Their love story had started with violence and fear, but it had grown into something transcendent. It was proof that good things could come from bad situations, that hope could survive even in the darkest moments, that love really could conquer all. As they sat on their porch for the 10,000th time, watching the desert night settle around them, Willow and Mara Quinn were content. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. Their children were good people raising good children of their own. Their ranch thrived. Their story endured. "Thank you," Mara said softly. "For what? For everything. For saving me, for loving me. For giving me this life." Willow brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with the same tenderness he had shown 33 years ago on this very porch. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for being brave enough to trust when you had every reason not to. I love you, Willow Quinn. I love you, Mara Quinn. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that until there are no more days." They stayed there until the stars were thick overhead and the air turned cool. Inside, their family waited, but for these few moments, it was just the two of them. The woman from the wanted poster and the cowboy who had hidden her. The fugitive and her protector. The wife and husband. The grandmother and grandfather. But most importantly, two people who had loved each other without question, without hesitation, without end. Two people who had proven that love, real love, was worth any risk, any sacrifice, any challenge. The wanted poster had shown a face marked for death, but Willow had seen a woman marked for life, for love, for happiness. And he had been right. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, Mara Jenkins had not just survived. She had thrived. She had built a beautiful life with a good man in a harsh land, and she had done it without ever losing herself or her strength. Their story could have ended a dozen different ways, almost all of them tragic. But it did not. It ended here in this moment with two old people sitting on a porch holding hands and watching the stars. It ended with love triumphant, with justice served, with a family that would carry their legacy forward for generations. The wanted poster had her face. The cowboy hid her and loved her without question. And together, they wrote a story that would outlive them both, a testament to the power of choosing love over fear, compassion over judgment, righteousness over ease. As they finally stood to go inside, their joints creaking and their movements slow, Willow and Mara shared one more kiss under the starlight. It was gentle and sweet, filled with decades of devotion and trust. Then, hand in hand, they walked into their house, into the warmth and noise and love of their family. The door closed behind them, but their story lived on, passed from generation to generation, a reminder that love could bloom anywhere, even in the harsh desert. That courage came in many forms. That choosing to help someone in need was never the wrong choice. That the greatest adventure was opening your heart to another person and building a life together. The wanted poster was gone. The danger was past. The fugitive was free. And the cowboy who had hidden her had gained far more than he had risked. He had gained a partner, a love, a life worth living. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the fear or the danger or the injustice, but what came after. The love. The family. The life they built together from the ashes of the worst day of Mara's life and the best decision of Willow's. They lived out their days in peace and happiness, surrounded by the people they loved most. And when the time came, many years later, they passed within months of each other, neither able to bear a world without the other in it. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch, under a cottonwood tree that had sheltered generations of their family. The headstone was simple: Willow Quinn and Mara Quinn, beloved husband and wife, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. Underneath, a single line that captured the essence of their story: love without question, faith without doubt, courage without end. Their descendants would come to visit that grave for decades, bringing their own children to tell them the story of how it all began. The story of a wanted poster and a cowboy, of hiding and protecting and loving without hesitation. The story that proved love could overcome anything if you were brave enough to fight for it. And in that way, Willow and Mara Quinn lived forever, their love story echoing through time, inspiring others to be brave, to be kind, to choose love even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The wanted poster had her face, but Willow saw her heart, and that made all the difference.